Test, test.
Upside down.
Yes, it works. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue with the next part and the last part of this guest lecture. And first of all, I'm going to walk to my colleague, Aditi Gupta. She had a very, very pressing question, I understood, at the end of the second part. So here you go.
Hi, my name is Aditi, as you all already know. I just was wondering, as I was listening to you about the social shifts that happen in the world or political movements. Like I'm Indian, so if you look at India, we changed as a culture a lot because of colonization. And then with American consumerism, the culture shifted towards West, and we still kind of are in middle of that change. And now if you look at Netherlands, the culture shifted so much post-emancipation, right, when we question patriarchy. And how does culture shapes that, or do you think these social political movements influence the culture to shift? I would like to know your opinion on that.
Both. It is the case that India, as you may have seen, for a poor country at the time of the study, had a quite individualistic culture. The Netherlands have a very, very individualistic culture. It is easy for individualistic cultures to change when the wind of the economy or the world change. Because people are loose, they can go to new places. And that's more true for the Netherlands than for India. So that is a change. Whether it's also a change at the level of cultural values is much less certain. The fact that British democratic rule took root in India but not in China has a lot to do with a great gap in individualism between those two societies. So it's difficult to say something about the causes and the direction of current unrest. But it is certainly the case that if you have an individualistic society and there is reason for competition or concern, it's easier for people to actually start fighting in a visible way. It would remain more underground in a more collectivistic society.
Still some room for another question?
Yes, one more.
This is my distance for my eyes without wearing glasses. Does immigration change the score of a country or on a dimension or dimensions?
Does immigration change the score of a country on a dimension? Not in the short run. Typically across 3 generations, the immigrants will sort of merge into mainstream population. But yes, if there is a lot of immigration, then you will see that the immigrants will tend to maintain their culture, especially if they all come together, when they will probably form separate communities rather than integrate into an existing community. So cultures are always on the move in a certain way, but like with the climate, it's very hard to pinpoint it when it happens. It becomes easier if you're a historian to make sense of it afterwards.
Another question comes up. I mean, that's also true for the, you talked about a new generation of students, of people, you know, they're the ones who have to change the world, right? Basically, so it's quite a, you know, a big responsibility to take on your shoulders. But one of the questions was, is striving for biodiversity and a better nature and sustainability, can it be done more successfully by feminine or by more masculine societies, or is that something
it can be done by any society, but the way in which it will be done and the way the motivation to do it is formed will differ. So in a machine quadrant, you will need careful preparation and then go. In a pyramid quadrant, you will need leadership that is convinced and schooling into specialisms that will then really do what they are supposed to be doing. In a family, it will be more diffuse, but certainly has to be carried by top leadership. In a very egalitarian society, let's say Iceland, Austria, it could be much more distributed in its sources. So everybody can do it, but the way in which you do it, when you go to Rome, do as the Romans do. You will have to do it in a different way.
Like I said, there's no excuse, right, to change the world, basically.
There are reasons, but not excuses. So a reason at the level of the people is not an excuse for an individual.
Right.
Maybe a follow-up question for that point. I saw in one of these scatter diagrams that Russia is more oriented on the long term. And how could you explain that what's happening right now, short-term success, while they're more long-term oriented.
I think that what Putin is doing is very long-term oriented. He wants to re-establish the grandeur of the Soviet Empire, fully believing that this is a sort of God-given duty, and from a very pyramidal worldview, where he is at the top of the pyramid, he has the fullest right to do that. And the people below him are very loath to do anything to displease him or to disagree.
Some people argue that the world's becoming a global place and that we are global citizens or globetrotters, and these dimensions actually, well, I wouldn't say they do not matter, they do matter, but that's there's more grey than black and white going on. Is that something that you can relate to?
People can say that, but why don't you travel? And why don't you stay for a year in, let's say, a village in Kenya, or in Amazonia, or in Guangzhou in China, or whatever, and let's talk again after that. And really get to live the local life.
Then you have your answer.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah, due to time reason, we're on a tight schedule, but maybe there are some other questions still popping up from the audience before we conclude it.
I still want to tell my story.
Exactly.
I
so
don't want to conclude.
So that's good. So
loaded with
very
message.
quick question, then I'll give the floor to you then, Gert Jan.
You have to throw the cash box. Let me throw.
Yeah, good point.
Where are you?
There are more people, but we'll see who catches it. That's
Should catch it.
yeah. So one more question, and of course I will give the floor to Gert Jan for the concluding thoughts.
Are there some cultures that are more powerful than the other ones, more strong? Because cultures get together more and more nowadays. People marry people from the other side of the world, coming from a completely different culture, and then their child is a mix of the two. But I'm wondering if if some cultures are stronger than the other ones, also in societies.
Strength is not a property of a culture. Properties of culture, as I have shown, are these 6 dimensions. Now, in a marriage between 2 people from different cultures, of course, one could be stronger than the other. And also, it's the case that peoples, not their cultures, but peoples, have certain status in the world. And since the Second World War, understandably, the USA and Canada have acquired very high status, having liberated a lot of countries from the Nazis. So, but you cannot, it's not meaningful to say, is one culture stronger than the other? Okay, can we go to the next, please? And it was here, yeah.
My question is quite big. It's, what do you think for the future of the world? Like, can we put aside borders and cultures, and is it possible to have a united world?
If you allow me, this is precisely what I wanted to talk about, because what I want to plead for is that we need another Operation Market Garden, but with the arrow. So we need to go from an image of the world as a market to an image of the world as a garden. And that addresses precisely your question. Okay? So let me give you that little story, and then you can respond. And then I'll give it back to the other 2 here. Okay. So, okay. So what we need to agree about is that, what is the case now is that although market quadrant cultures have dominated since the Second World War, they are no longer doing so. I said that before. So what needs to happen? Well, and this is what you are talking about, we need to agree to differ. We should not want to be all the same. We should not fight about who is the strongest. We should say no. We have to resolve common resource issues about water, climate, and so on, and goods. But we need to agree to differ. No culture quadrant can rule. What about a new metaphor? We need to have a shared moral circle between everybody in the world. And this is also what you're talking about. And I thought of the metaphor of the garden. This is actually my own garden. And you can see it's very pleasant. You like to be here, don't you? It has some secret corners. There are some passageways that you don't not quite know what's in there, but it has a right to be secret and to exist. It is being tended. Somebody's managing it in a loving way, and different people could go and visit. Actually, a better garden would be the garden of Charles Darwin. Now, this is Charles Darwin's house. I was recently here in October. And this is a very big garden with also a greenhouse in it. This is the main lawn. And we're all, in a way, children of Charles Darwin. Plants, animals, and everything. So anyway, a garden. It's a meeting place. It's looked after, it's varied, and it's beautiful. So this is what I think we should strive for. And I think you guys are in a very good position to be part of that. Although you have to be careful, because other people who are not as privileged as you might become jealous. And once somebody thinks they are not getting enough status relative to you, they will be motivated to use power against you. And you can talk to them as much as you like, they don't want to listen. So what we need is a garden to live together. How do we do that? How do we learn to get along? And this is a bit of flowchart that I think summarizes the life across moral circles that we can have. It's the last thing I will say. So first we need to find somebody to love. And if you're a baby, it's easy. It's going to be your parents, your siblings, your family, maybe your village. That already differs in different cultures. So then you start to claim status. You say, I'm hungry, or can you cut my hair, mum, or things like that. And you consult your reference groups, everybody who's important for you, to know how to behave. If your claim is successful, then you have a happy group life. The people you live with, they honor your claim, you're happy, and you will return status to them, and you have this happy interchange in a family or a group. However, if the claim is not successful, and you're not desperate, so the box 6 in one, you will be maybe sad or angry, depending on the case. And maybe you will try again. And this is what we need. So among you guys, there will be a lot of this happening, acculturation and socialization, where you learn that, oh, here in this country, things are a little bit different. Or you're Dutch, you have a Chinese friend, and it takes you some time to start to understand them. So being able to understand the differences between those moral circles and how to be nice across them, how to be sort of extra, if you like, diplomatic. Diplomacy is all about being nice in different moral circles. So this is what we need, and it involves learning, lifelong learning actually, international and intercultural learning. And it's only possible if you do not feel threatened. People who are anxious and threatened and uncertain, they don't want to do this. They want to be angry. They might end up leaving the group and going somewhere else, a place that offers them more safety, that maybe wins them with a lot of anxiety, but a message that seems to be loving. So this is a danger. Now, of course, sometimes you're right to hop groups. There are people who do very well to leave dysfunctioning families and go somewhere else, or to leave a situation in which they cannot be who they are and go to another country. But if you then are disappointed again in the new situation and hop again, like following 5 schools one after the other when you're 20, then maybe you need to consult yourself and say, wait a minute, am I getting disappointed too early? Finally, if people never make successful claims, nobody loves them, and they don't even want to try a new group, that's when you become a rock or an island, or even worse. If you also believe that people have wronged you and used power against you, maybe you take a gun and you start to shoot the teachers in your old school and the new pupils there. So we need a lot of acculturation and socialization. That's the idea. Across all of these cultural configurations, markets, families, pyramids, machines. And can you think of a purpose that we could take in doing that? Because if you have no reason to meet, why should you meet? What should we be doing together? I give it back to you.
sorry?
Yeah, just speak.
Yeah. For example, we have the European Union. Is the European Union a good example for integration of the other countries who are not that developed, and it's opportunity for them to develop more? And like we have a good example with the Schengen. Schengen, which is free movement of people, trading, and so with no borders. Is that possible not only in the European Union, but also in the other countries? And yeah, can we open the borders and just travel for free and enjoy other cultures for free and integrate in other cultures and so on?
I think we can do a lot better than we're doing now. I also think the European Union is a great success. Actually, if it's victim of anything, it's not its failure, but its success. And you may have seen that European countries on the whole are very uncertainty avoiding. So it's easy for political leaders to whip up xenophobia. And this is now a danger for the EU and for further growth. Also, climate change is already sending lots of refugees into better off places such as Europe. This is going to become a lot worse. So yes, I think the kind of, it's maybe a little bit more like a machine than like a garden, the EU. But this kind of structure where there is not a domination, but there is a voluntary coming together, that's what we need more of. But also, it would be really nice if we could get away from the constant talk about anxiety and things that go wrong into what is beautiful, and not separate those two arenas, as if the real serious life was only about what goes wrong, and what goes well and what is nice is not somehow as important and as real. That's not true.